The Great News Podcast is brought to you by Podcast Hero. Head on over to podcasthero.com and learn the 4 Ps of podcasting and start your own show. Tired of all the doom and gloom news from mainstream media? You'll get none of that here. Instead, you'll find inspiring stories and developments that are making the world a better place. Today on the Great News Podcast, a new, more effective sunscreen has been developed that does not harm coral reefs. New tracking technology tracks sharks as they are born. Solar-powered reactor converts plastics and CO2 into sustainable fuels. A new wearable voice monitor warns voice professionals when to save their voice for later. And a new discovery could lead to a new way to fight cancer and aging. All this and more is available in this issue of the Great Newsletter. Go over to greatnewspodcast.com and subscribe to the Great Newsletter. A new, more effective sunscreen has been developed that does not harm coral reefs. The use of sunscreen is an important part of protecting our skin from overexposure to the sun, which is associated with the development of skin cancers. Non-melanoma skin cancer, or NMSC, is one of the most common types of cancer and occurs widely around the world with a significant economic cost associated with the treatment of this preventable disease. A team of researchers at Tsinghua University have developed a prototype for coral reef-friendly sunscreen that is more effective at preventing sunburn in mice than existing products. The polymeric UV filter, presented in the journal Cell Reports Physical Sciences, is too large to penetrate our skin, coral, and algae, yet still blocks UV radiation. It is non-hazardous for coral and algae, 2 groups of organisms that are harmed by currently available chemical sunscreens. Senior author Leo Tao, a chemist at Tsinghua University, was inspired to explore environmentally friendly sunscreen after visiting the Great Barrier Reef in 2010. Quote, "I was blown away by the beautiful coral, and ever since I learned that sunscreen is one of the causes of coral bleaching, I kept thinking about ways to develop a coral-friendly sunscreen." Unquote. Lei Tao, Tsinghua University. The researchers created the sunscreen by using polymerization to create large molecules. They then compared the polymer's SPF value and capacity to absorb UV radiation and zeroed in on the best candidate. When tested on mice, the winning polymer was found to be significantly superior to oxybenzone, avobenzone, the 2 commercial sunscreens. The mice did not absorb the polymer through their skin, nor did they experience any inflammation or other skin damage. The polymer UV filter also appears to be non-hazardous for coral and algae, as chlorella algae were unaffected when the team grew it in its presence of small amounts of polymer, as were 2 common types of coral. These same corals bleached and died within 6 and 20 days of exposure to oxybenzone, respectively. One caveat of the UV filter is that it is not biodegradable, due to the structure of its chemical backbone, but the researchers say that this is just the first step towards developing the next generation of environmentally safe UV filters. They are now hoping to work with companies to test their current polymer and see whether it can be used in sunscreens. New tracking technology tracks sharks as they are born. Scientists say they have developed a revolutionary new tracking technology that may be the key to saving sharks from extinction. A team from Arizona State University has developed an intrauterine satellite tag, called the Birth Alert Tags, that is inserted into pregnant sharks. When the shark gives birth, the tag pops out and floats to the surface, transmitting messages that announce the time and location of the birth. The device has already been used on 3 shark species, sand sharks, scalloped hammerheads, and tiger sharks, and is yielding remarkable results. The scientists once assumed that sand sharks gave birth inland, but this new technology reveals that they prefer to do so in abandoned shipwrecks on the ocean floor. Quote, "This novel satellite-based technology will be especially valuable for the protection of threatened and endangered shark species. We've been trying to do this since we started studying sharks. This is our holy grail, unquote. Professor James Sulikowski, ASU. The hope is that the device will help scientists find suitable habitats for shark pups to grow up in, preventing their extinction. This novel satellite-based technology will be especially valuable for the protection of threatened and endangered shark species. A solar-powered reactor converts plastics and CO2 into sustainable fuels. A team of researchers from the University of Cambridge has developed a revolutionary solar-powered system that can simultaneously convert plastic waste and greenhouse gases into sustainable liquid fuels. This is the first time such a process has been achieved in a single reactor using only solar power. The reactor uses a light absorber based on perovskite, an alternative to silicon for next-generation solar cells, and different catalysts to convert carbon dioxide into syngas, a key building block for sustainable liquid fuels, and plastic bottles into glycolic acid, which is widely used in the cosmetics industry. Quote, "Converting waste into something useful using solar energy is a major goal of our research. Plastic pollution is a huge problem worldwide, and often many of the plastics we throw into recycling bins are incinerated or end up in landfill." Unquote. Lead author Professor Erwin Reisner. The results of the study were recently published in the journal Nature Synthesis. The researchers hope that their system could be used to develop an entirely solar-powered recycling plant in the future. Reisner added, "The development of a circular economy, where we make useful things from waste instead of throwing it into a landfill, is vital if we're going to meaningfully address the climate crisis and protect the natural world. And powering these solutions using the sun means that we're doing it cleanly and sustainably." The cool thing about this breakthrough is it converts two waste streams, plastic and CO2, into two chemical products at the same time. Converting waste products into something useful using only solar energy is a big win for the environment because the plastic problem is a major issue, with most of the recycled plastic being dumped or incinerated. And of course, carbon is a major contributor to human-caused climate change. The team is now working on further developing the reactor to produce more complex molecules. Reisner recently received new funding from the European Research Council to develop the reactor. The researchers say that similar technologies could someday be used to develop an entirely powered recycling plant. A new wearable voice monitor warns voice professionals when to save their voice for later. A new wearable system being developed by a team of scientists, engineers, opera singers, and speech-language pathologists from Northwestern University may be a great way to help professional singers, public speakers, and voice actors save their voice. The setup consists of two devices, a vibrational sensor that is attached to the chest, and a haptic feedback unit worn on the wrist. Both are wirelessly connected to an app on the user's smartphone. The sensor captures the vibrations of the user's vocal cords, which are then processed using machine learning algorithms to determine the frequency, volume, amplitude, and duration of speech, as well as the times during which vocalizations occur. The app gives you a warning using haptic feedback, and a display on the app provides additional information and recommendations for rest. Great news for podcasters, voice actors, and singers. Anybody who makes money from their voice. And finally, a new discovery could lead to a new way to fight cancer and aging. Scientists from the University of Copenhagen have made a revolutionary discovery in the fight against aging and cancer, a new mechanism of how cells remember their identity when they divide. This new mechanism, called H2A-H2B, mediated epigenetic memory, is key to preserving the genome structure of cells and can help slow down aging and counteract cancer. The new study, published in the internationally recognized journal Cell, was led by Professor Anja Groth and postdoc Valentin Fleury at the Novo Nordisk Foundation Center for Protein Research. Quote, "Once we fully understand this mechanism, it could help counteract cancer and aging, It is part of the amazingly complex network acting to maintain the function of each cell in our body, unquote, Professor Groth. By understanding how cells copy their information, we can make cells preserve themselves much better than we do now, and be able to slow down aging and perhaps even counteract cancer. Using an analogy, the researchers describe the mechanism as bookmarks that ensure each cell uses the correct combination of information to become the correct cell type. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Great News Podcast. I hope you're enjoying the show. Any feedback can be sent to andrew@greatnewspodcast.com. And don't forget to sign up for the Great Newsletter, because the Great News Podcast is great, but the Great Newsletter is greater. See you next episode.
Podcasthero.com